Welcome to the group with a long acronym, People Talking About Cultures. We were going to start with a topic that's been submitted by Nico. How did you put it to? Deities' mortal root? So we're talking about how deities in our mythology actually have roots in actual men, women, kings, or chiefs. We're going to start first, quick. Tavita, Vita, and no, that way I'll pass it to you too. Introduce yourself.
Bolunaka, Tunrau, from the beautiful islands of Fiji, closest place to heaven.
And the best R's around.
You know it.
Nice.
Over to you, Mausi.
Tarufa, I am Maosi, and I'm putting away my children.
Hi, I'm Rossa, and I'm from Australia, Sydney.
I don't mean I don't want to presume, but I know you have a Tongan family, correct?
Yes, I do.
Even though you are of Samoan descent.
Yes, correct.
So with neither Nico nor Leka in the room, with neither of them in the room, you're gonna have to be our Tongan authority for now.
Okay.
The topic is deities around the Pacific who were at one point just a person. And I wanted to kick this off because just earlier today, hopefully Mausi's in to hear this. If you're busy, Mausi, don't worry tagging in just yet. I'll repeat myself later if I have to. So I spoke with a friend of mine, excuse me, who's big into Samoan history, and he was telling me earlier today, just today, like kind of out of clear blue sky, he mentioned Tila Whainga and Taima. And I said, oh yeah, like Nafanua, right? And he goes, stop right there. I'm going to tell you something crazy. And I said, oh, what's that? And he said, Tila Whainga told Taima, you go to Kukuila. And then Tila Whainga herself stayed and became Nafanua. So kind of like Bruce Wayne putting on the Batman suit, that was Tila Whainga becoming Nafanua. And so automatically I was like, okay, where'd you get this from? And he told me that he had interviewed someone who literally forced him to log this down. And what was interesting about this is that the person that forced him to write this down was possessed of a spirit was actually full of the ma'iaiku from a spirit from apparently back in the day. No, take it with a grain of salt, but I got goosebumps when he told me that, and I was a little bit like, that's I wouldn't trust that right away, but the fact that you sat there and took a story down from someone who had ma'iaiku, good on you, bro. I wouldn't be able to do that.
I'd be like 10 feet and running.
I mean, like, you keep talking, I'm going to go this way. But I wanted to, especially because, Mausi, you seem to be pretty knowledgeable, well, a lot more knowledgeable than I am on it. I wanted to see what you thought of that take. It seems like something that people will either be like, wow, or be like, eh. What do you think, bro?
Right.
Yeah, like I said, I'm open. I'm a lot more open than a lot more people to different perspectives on the stories because I don't think that there's always one correct version of every tale. Something that we learned when we were at University of Hawaii from our teachers that every family is going to have a different interpretation, and nobody I know has a story that doesn't accept that belief. I do, like I was saying about my wife previously, I do believe in the possession, and I know that that's something that happens to people, and you can speak through a living person that way, and it's really, really interesting because like we're talking about modern medicine versus traditional medicine. In that book that I have, the Samoan herbal medicines, it kind of talks about it, and it writes it off as a way of victims being able to say things that they wouldn't normally be able to say because they're speaking as if they were somebody else. But a lot of times, I would say the victim has they have no connection with the person that they're speaking for.
Right.
So I don't particularly subscribe to that idea that it's just, somebody that's speaking out of trauma. I do believe, I believe that if our ancestors, they have different ways of contacting us besides just possession. I mean, a lot of times they come to us in dreams.
Yeah.
I have a lot of experience of having dreams of dreams where ancestors speak to us, and I know that they're not gone because I've had a lot of experiences of just them talking to me and guiding me through different things. When I did the 2017 family reunion, a lot of the family history work that we did was inspired. Like I had to first search out things and then get inspiration on which route to take that was the most correct from from my ancestors who had lived before. So yeah, I accept that story. And I don't see anything in any other story that would contradict it.
One of the things that he had pointed out, my friend, when he was telling me this, was he said, we talk about when Nafanua comes into the picture for the first time, why is it that we never hear about Tila Fainga or Taima at all afterwards? It's like there's no story of them afterwards. And I don't know. I guess that's something that's still kind of circumstantial, but it struck me like enough that I got goosebumps, and it's kind of something that's been sitting on my mind since. That was a couple of hours ago. I was trying to sneak in some homework before actually calling this meeting because I've been out of action for the last couple of days. Been sick since yesterday morning, so I didn't do as much homework as I should have. I'm sorry.
That's all right.
But does anybody else have from any other cultures any stories of what that might of that kind of thing where there's a deity or a demigod or anything like that that actually has roots in well
I wish Inoki was here because there's one of the principal deities that we have, such as some of them have more mortal origins than we thought. Because I always took those stories at face value, you might say, as it were. So when someone said that they were gods, that was it. Okay, so they were gods; they were always gods. But I think from what I've seen thus far, I've come to believe that these gods are so people with charisma or such that that it was better that they lived even though they died as a means to keep their enemies at bay, especially with chiefs and such. So say a victorious chief who was always victorious or mostly victorious, when he died, they'd say, oh, he's still alive. He became a god and such, and he's now what we call guardian spirits of certain places. So you have Vu like Dakuanga, or who is from Taviuni, or Rombakanideva from Kandavu, or Rombatindua from Rewa. All these places, they have guardian spirits, which if you were to study them properly, you'd note that they may have been
a person at one point.
perceived. Yeah. So especially those last two names that I mentioned, Rokombakanidava and Rombatindua, because in those places, chiefs, their titles are Ro and Roko. So yeah, so if those were, since they were chiefly titles, then there may have been someone called Mbakanidava or Mbatindua in earlier times who at such a point may have been a great warrior or such that they decided to deify them, make them a deity, and thus a guardian spirit of the place.
Right on. I was gonna ask. Could you say those names again one more time? I mean, not just because I want to hear you roll the R's, but I'm trying to catch the. I'm trying to. I might have to ask you to text this to me. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's all right. That's
Chat.
Yeah.
Dakuanga,
I got
Rokompakanidela,
Dakwanga. There you go.
Rompatindua.
That's the one. Best stars in the Pacific. Here we go.
Yeah, that's what I've seen thus far, and I believe Inoki actually delved more into this. Unfortunately, he's not here with us right now.
I was trying to think which deities in someone history or culture might have like actual mortal origins. I don't know. I mean, Cena could be. I mean, I know because it comes back to for some ones it's not there's not a differentiation between myth and legend, and it's all just oral history. It's all encompassed in our history. And so when we tell these stories, traditionally they're told as if they're history and not like this part is folk stories and this part is tall tales. It's all part and parcel our history, our oral
Right.
traditions. So we do kind of technically look at all of our they're actual. We all look at them as actual, but like none of them are fictitious is what I mean to say. So when we give accounts of Tangaloa and the path to Pulotu, we're talking about an actual deity and an actual it's not what we call like Greek mythology, or it's possible that somewhere whatever. No, these are actual people's places things, and I don't know that we can say any of them are. It's hard to say which ones are actual people before they were deities, but it's given as such as that's everything was actual, not metaphorical, not symbolic, and not in another universe, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Can I just say that Mao, she looks like one of the statues from Rapa Nui? I'm sorry, I couldn't help myself. Sorry, Mausi.
Melissa, you know, one of these days we're gonna end up cornering you with questions about the business, right? Tu and I have been talking a lot about how things go down in the business. So
Yeah,
shoot,
that's cool.
if we have enough time, we might bother you about it today.
I don't think we do. We're on 27 minutes now.
Oh, okay. I feel like it's going to be kind of an incomplete issue because Nico's not here. I feel like he had a lot to say on this, so we may have to just table this conversation until we're able to get Nico back. Did anyone have anything else you wanted to add concerning this, even a little bit? Oh, Mousy.
Mousy does.
Thank you. So as far as them being mortals that were that achieve things that raise their status to being deity, I mean, I do subscribe to that a little because I do understand that that was the way that we attained ali'i titles. When what I mean, somebody becomes an ali'i by achieving something, and then that's where their falanginga comes from. When in the structure of the falupenga is whatever you have done in your career as a Samoan, then that becomes part of your falupenga and your falanginga and all of those specific things. But I do also believe that we put a little too little faith into the truth behind all of these things. That, I mean, once again, like we said last week, I have a big problem with saying it's, and one of the things that I learned from Aumua when we were at UH again was that there's a differential between tales, and so we have what's called whangongo, which are made up tales. Now the thing that's escaping me is that I can't for the life of me right at this moment find an example of a whangongo, but I have a lot of examples of the other side, which is what they call tala o levavao. Now tala o levavao basically means like something from history, a story that we believe is truth. And the reason that I say this is because what a vavao is in definition is evidence. Then that's what Amua taught us, was that, you know, if there's if there is evidence of the story, then that means it has historical value. And there's 3 things she classified as vavao, and one of them are historical landmarks. The other thing she had was Swafa Matai and genealogy. So those 3 things, if those 3 things tie into a story, and it's really interesting. They used to have a program up on YouTube called Toy Sa'ale Fafao, and it was run by Amosa, not Amosa, what is his name? Maulolo. So Maulolo used to go on there and he would run this group of Matais. He had a whole table full of them, and he would talk story with them. And they were talking about the story of Vaya and Apaula again. You know, the Fijians who had come forward to test the strength of Vaya, and then Vaya ends up taking their sister. And because he's a giant, again, you know, nobody could mess with him because he was too strong. Now, while they're discussing this story, the names are starting to come up of the brothers of Apaula and then the brother of Vaya. And he turns to one of the other chiefs and he asks him, "What is your first name again?" And then the guy goes, "Oh, my first name is Va'ataushili." And then he begins to explain how his ngafa, his genealogy connects him to Vaya and connects him to all of that. And their village in Tufutafoi over there in Savai, it actually connects a lot to that story. And those are the things, you know, like I said, that we were talking about I think it was a few weeks back when we were talking about Lafafao, Sauli'i, and all of those things being in Savai. Those are the landmarks that are historically preserved over there in that village that mark that this story is actually a truth and not just a fangong. So there's a plethora of evidences on this for a bunch of the different stories. I mean, you have the Sa'umani family, which is about fishermen that pick up this boy by the name of Velova'a, and then they end up dragging this enormous turtle from Manua all the way back to Savai, and then all the way while they're dragging the turtle's carcass through different villages, different villages get their names from the different parts of the turtle that ended up getting left in certain parts of Savai. So there's all these different things that go in with that. But as far as them being men that were raised to deity status, I you know, as much as I agree somewhat, you know, because of today's understandings and, you know, the things that we believe so much what we see and not so much what we hear. But for me, it's like we're not alone in believing these things, and that's what kind of makes me kind of think that, you know, even though we don't see so much of it today, the things that they might have accomplished back in the day, maybe they did have some kind of connection with the spirit. One of the things to me that's big with Christianity is that, you know, Jesus Christ had to come down to earth and get a body and live here, and he did die. And this is one of the biggest things that we believe, is that, you know, Jesus Christ, Son of God, born. So you have to be immortal at some point to get to this world. But, you know, the things that he accomplished while he was here were obviously unable to be explained by science in these days. In fact, we're looking at it in retrospect and trying to explain it away nowadays. But he's not the only example of this. You have examples like of giants like Goliath, and you have the examples of, you know, the guys like Samsongi and the things that he did in the Bible. So we're not, and I'm pretty sure every culture, you know, even Greek mythology, I mean, some of it, while some of it is fables, you know, you do have records and you have evidence in the stories that link them to actual things that happen that cannot be explained by the faith that we have these days. So I've always kind of took it with a grain of salt, like we like to say, that, you know, even though nowadays we may not have the faith to see these kinds of things, I do believe that back in the day, that even though these people were part mortal, they did have some, you know, they did have some kind of ability blessed beyond them, you know, to be able to accomplish the kind of things that they did, especially Pili, man. If you hear the stories about Pili and the things that he could do, I mean, they were just out of this world. And there's no way that, you know, any man from the stories, I mean, basically what Pili would do was he would serve the village so well, they would ask him to become chief. And when he was chief, he would say, you know, you guys can't handle how I serve. You guys can't make the same quantity of food that I can make. So there's no reason for me to be your chief because you guys can't handle your coke. You guys can't service me this way. And sure, you know, they couldn't come up with the same quantity of food. And when he cast his net, you know, he'd catch so many fish, nobody else could do it with just one person. So, you know, there's got to be something there beyond just us praising him, you know, beyond just praising his accomplishments. I do believe that there's a type of strength that these guys have. I mean, even recently, back in maybe 2 or 3 generations ago, we still have stories of like our grandfathers and grandparents doing things that can't be explained by science. So I subscribe to belief totally in our traditional belief that these guys weren't just, you know, mortals that were raised to deity status, but rather they actually had a part of them that was more spiritual and more in tune with that kind of life than it was with being mortal. And that's what I wanted to say about that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Cool.
Just to tack on a little bit to that really quickly, even if you don't believe in that sort of thing, science has proven that every generation of people, but they've proven by science that every generation of people is physically weaker than the generation before, and that this is a trend that has been happening.
Really?
Yeah, seriously, proven.
What?
Proven.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they have proven that people, men and women, are like, I think the number that I read was like right now, like 30%. Like, I don't know what they based the numbers on, but the number that I remember reading was 30 something percent from our great grandparents, from 3 generations up.
Dinner.
We're talking about a direct downward trend in physical strength and agility and
Wow.
all of those things. Yeah.
And
That's
all
crazy.
because we stopped being cannibals.
Stop eating that good stuff. We gotta start eating clean again. Okay. So I'm looking at the time. We're at 35 minutes. Stu had a very good suggestion that we call it stop right here, give it a 5-minute pause, and come back for another session. Is everybody okay with that? Give me a thumbs up if you think so. Cool. All right. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Right on.
Knowledge Bauer.